Welcome to Sheriff's Talk, brought to you by the Missouri Sheriff's Association. During this episode and ones that follow, we'll be talking with sheriffs from across the state regarding topics relating to county law enforcement and jails. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
The Missouri Sheriff's Association, or MSA, was established in 1945 with the goal to support the sheriffs of Missouri and their staff by offering law enforcement training, legislative support, and technical support. MSA offers memberships, agency contracts, and vendor partnerships, and each comes with their own variety of perks like full access to the learning management system and support, tax-deductible contributions, membership card, vehicle decals, sheriff and jail magazine subscriptions, advertisement opportunities, reduced training prices, access to webinars, podcasts, and training, and CCW support. Join the Missouri Sheriff's Association and proudly display your support for your local law enforcement and Missouri sheriffs. Your tax-deductible contributions will go a long way to ensure the Office of Sheriff in Missouri remains strong, independent office, answerable to those citizens that it is sworn to serve and protect. Your support is what makes the Missouri Sheriff's Association great, so visit mosheriffs.com and become a member today.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Sheriff Talk. I'm your host, Sam Boyd. We'd like to thank the sponsor right out the gate for sponsoring the show. I am here with Sheriff Kent Oberkrom from Henry County. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Sam. Thanks.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
So for those of you who don't know, when I was a jail administrator, I was a jail administrator for almost 10 years. And Sheriff Oberkrom was my sheriff and the gentleman that brought me on to be his jail administrator. And I'd just like to say I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
And thank you. We miss you around at the sheriff's office quite a little bit, but it's I say that about myself. Sometimes when I'm gone, it runs a little better, and it's still running and doing well without you. No offense, but we still miss the many talents you brought to the office during that time. So
being your current sergeant, jail administrator, Jackie. We always talked about it. I said, we die today. It's still going to be here. It's still going to run. Somebody's going to run it.
Absolutely.
We're not the king of the jail administrators or the jail or whatever. It's still going to run.
I tell people about being sheriff. I'm just the current manager.
Yep.
There'll be another manager someday, and we'll talk about that here in a minute as I'm getting ready to retire. So, yeah,
that's exactly right. So, I know where you're from, but we're going to let the audience know that you're from Henry County, Missouri.
Henry County, over Clinton. Can't say I was born there. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, but my family moved back to the Henry County area, so I've lived there since I was 2 years old. Always wanted to be sheriff of the county. Started off as a deputy sheriff when I first got out of college. Then worked for the police department and longest term for the juvenile office in the 27th Circuit. But my dad was real good friends with the sheriff, who was a 20-year sheriff before he retired, Wilbur Smith, and he would bring inmates out to our farm to haul hay and work cattle and stuff. My mom just hated it. Thought it was a crazy idea, but back in those days, that's kind of what you did back in the 70s. Wouldn't anymore do that today in the Man of the Moon, and you'd be in a lot of trouble for it. So, but that's just the way life was back in the day. But when I met Sheriff Smith and being around, Dad stopped by the office in town and talked to him. I thought, I just really think I want to do this. I want to be in law enforcement. I'd like to be sheriff someday. I kind of knew that since I was about 13 years old.
Yeah. So we talked about, you can kind of hit on a little bit how long you've been doing this, but how long have you been the sheriff?
28 years. Elected in November of 1996 and took office January 1st, 1997. So this is my 28th year.
And you were in law enforcement some prior to that?
I was. I worked a couple of years for the sheriff's office, as I said, when I first got out of college. Then went to work for the Clinton Police Department for about 4 years, became a sergeant there. Then had an opportunity, and I've always liked working with kids. I've been active in the Boy Scout program for many, many years. And had an opportunity to go work for the juvenile justice system for the 27th Circuit, which was Henry, Bates, and St. Clair, now includes Benton as of a couple of years ago. But did that for about 11 years, and the opportunity was kind of right for me to run for sheriff, I thought. So made that decision, and here we are 28 years later.
Yep. So a couple reasons I have Sheriff Oberkrom in here today is that, one, he's getting ready to retire and release his duties to another elected sheriff. But he's also been around a while, and we're going to talk about how the sheriff position has evolved over a period of 28 or longer than 28 years as far as law enforcement goes, but 28 years as his sheriff duties. So with that, Sheriff. So back in, I'm not even going to try to do the math, but
78 when I was a deputy. Yeah.
Yep. So 78.
And
Yep.
97 when I took off sheriff. You know, we're a third class county. I think 85 of the 114 counties in Missouri are third class counties. So the majority of counties are in that classification, and most of them, when I started, even back in 78, but certainly was still the issue in 97 when I took office, didn't have a lot of resources. There wasn't health care provided to the employees. There wasn't retirement available for the employees. You had to bring your own car. You had to furnish your own patrol car. The county furnished the equipment for you, and you had to fill out this big mileage sheet and calculate it all up to get paid. You paid you mileage, basically whatever the IRS rate was, paid you mileage for the use of your car, but you bought your own gas. I remember in 78 when I worked there, I lived on the farm or lived out in the county, so I bought one of those 300-gallon farm tanks and, you know, bought gas. But you can imagine I think I made $450 a month was my salary when I started in 78. And you can imagine when you're buying 300-gallon of gas a time, it sometimes creates a little cash flow when you're, you know, young family, newly married, got kids, trying to raise kids and stuff. So it just became a problem. So in 98, I proposed a project where the county would own the patrol cars, and Joe Sims was the presiding commissioner. Joe's son Bobby was in my wedding, and we were good friends, went to college together and stuff. And so I went to him, or went to all the commissioners, but he was the one that really kind of sold it, I think, to the other two. And I said, you know, here's the problem. I said, I got a deputy comes work for me, brings their own car, and they tell me they got insurance on that car, and they can show me a card, but they can walk over to the insurance agent and cancel it the next day after the show. So they're doing the work of the county and maybe don't have adequate insurance. If we own the car, we know we got insurance on it. So that was kind of my spiel, if you will, or my selling point to Commissioner Sims, presiding Commissioner Sims at the time, and the county bought on it. So in 1998, I had to talk to the auditors. It's like, we want to buy the deputies' cars that they have now because they were patrol cars. So we went through a process of kind of bidding that, what the auditors told us to do. So we purchased their cars that they were already driving, and they became county owned vehicles. Then as the years passed, a few years after that, we saw health insurance, we saw retirement, some of those things finally come to life, and certainly help with retention and getting deputies to stay. You know, you had to love the job back in the day because you didn't get, your salary wasn't much, and it had zero benefits. Plus you had all this capital outlay. You had to buy your own uniforms, and, you know, you got a uniform allowance, and you had to bring your own car, and you know, you got a mileage allowance. But it was difficult a lot of times to kind of make ends meet as young families or young deputies back in those days.
So what training did you have in 1970? Or, well, let's say you might have had more training, but a new deputy that just got hired on as a deputy that may have been, I don't know, Walmart even existed. I don't know how far Walmart goes back, but let's say they worked at Walmart and they said, I want to be a deputy. Did they have to be trained?
Well, no, you know, well, in 97, when I took office, yes. In 78, you had a year. That's, I think, post actually started in 77 or 78. So the rule was you could work for an agency for up to a year. You had to go to an academy within the first year of your employment with an agency, which in today's time, when you think about it, it's a little crazy, all the things we engage in and the levels of training that we have for folks today. You know, you could work. I remember my first day at work, you know, they handed me this forged check and said, here, we need you to solve this case and start working on it. I go, okay. You know, it's like I have a college degree, but you know, it's not a practical application of field work, you know, what to do with that. So those kinds of things were a struggle, but that's just what it was. You had a year to go. I went to the academy, 120 hours is what you had to have. And I spent my 120 hours in a Tiger Hotel in Columbia, Missouri for 3 weeks getting my post license after I'd worked, I guess probably 6 or 8 months probably.
Yeah. So I just had an idea pop in my head. So you're talking about they really weren't trained, or they could have been trained, but a lot of people just came on the job with no training and they got it later. Around that same time frame, there were a lot of civil rights violations and stuff happening with you know, cases that probably came out of that time, and that's the reason, maybe a little bit of the reason it evolved into we need to get some training prior to them taking on.
You know, as a young deputy, of course, in college, we studied a lot of, you know, case law and stuff like that. But, you know, I saw stuff that wasn't necessarily illegal, but it was certainly a little over the top. And I'm going, oh my, you know, this is not what they taught us in college as far as how we should act and that kind of stuff. And certainly we're much better today than what we were then. But, and like I said, it wasn't anything that the other deputies did that was going to get them arrested or, fired or whatever, but just kind of the way they treated folks, particularly criminals or people who committed violations, much different then than what it is today, as far as just kind of how we treat people and making sure that their rights are protected. Of course, that's that's one of the goals of the sheriff, is to be a constitutional officer, to make sure people's constitutional rights are protected to the fullest.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go talk about crime over that period of time. So how has crime evolved, and just your county, in that small county of 20-some thousand people in your county, when from 1978 to now, how has crime evolved or gotten more prevalent?
Well, I always tell this funny story when somebody asked me that. I said, when I started in 78 and through my time with the Clinton Police Department, which was through 1984 or so, we'd go up to the juvenile office and play backgammon with the juvenile officers because there wasn't anything going on. Right. There weren't any calls for service. There wasn't anything. And I reflect back on that. And it's like, I can't imagine today having, we don't even have time to stop by and say, hey, how you doing? Much less have a game of backgammon in the back office with them, or checkers or whatever. So, I mean, times are just different. I mean, crime has increased, not only in volume, but the process to get things done, just the paperwork that's involved, and other things that we have to do to get a case ready. Then court processes are longer. I just was at a meeting last night talking to prosecutors and judges about, just the length of time it takes to get a case to trial. Just to get 3 or 4 days on the judge's calendar might be a year and a half out. I remember Kay Miles, the publisher of her newspaper, talked about the O.J. Simpson trial back in the day. She said, they've moved that to Henry County. We get that done in about 4 days here.
Not now.
Not now. Yeah, not now.
Yeah,
but, back in the 70s, she was absolutely right. We just, and trials were not that trials were unfair or anything else about it. It's just, we kind of took care of business back in those days.
So, is there any one or a couple of things you can say may have affected the change from 1978 to the crime the way it is today? What, even mental health, the issues with mental health, is there some societal things that have happened during that span of time that have led to more heinous crimes, less respect for law enforcement, that kind of stuff? Well,
and I don't think, I don't know that we see it so much in the rural area as they do in the major metropolitan areas, but I everybody always talks about drugs and kind of stuff. I talk about issues of parenting. If I called my mother the B word, which I had a young man do when I worked at the police department, and I told him when I worked at the juvenile office, if I come out the emergency room and you're getting your lips sewed up only to find out you called your mother the B word, I'm going home. There's nothing further really to talk about. And I could say those things back then. I wouldn't anymore do that. I tell the story about, a young man doing that who was intoxicated. And his mom and dad came in and he thought it was proper to call his mom the B word. Dad hit him upside the head and knocked him to the floor.
Yeah, that's the way I was.
And what we did as police officers, 3 or 4 of us standing there, we said, you all have a good night.
Yeah.
Back in 1980, that's what we said to them. You know what we do today? We'd arrest the father for assault. We would arrest him and take him to jail. And that's just the kind of the attitude of society and kind of just parent. Not encouraging folks to smack their kids upside the head, but it's just the ability to be able to discipline your kids and do that right. I reflect back on Ferguson too. I remember the mother I don't know if you remember that she came downtown to find her son and found him, and she was swinging something at him, telling him he better get his rear end home.
And I thought going,
that's my mom. Yeah,
that was
you
a good
go,
video.
girl. Yeah.
Yep. So, okay. Yep. So how much do you think social media plays into the development of society over time? I mean, you've seen it where typewriters, and you didn't even have a phone. I mean, if you were gone from the house for 8 hours, nobody's calling you because if you wanted to get milk or you had something going on at home, you didn't know until you got home.
Yeah.
Or somebody came and got you.
In the rural, I grew up in town or in the rural area on a farm, cattle farm. But, in those times that I came to town when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I'd bring my bike and my friends and I would go riding bikes all over town, and the rule was if the street lights are coming on, and you're not at home, you're in trouble. But we just ran all day, never checked in, never even gave that a wink about things. But today, we don't let kids do anything by themselves. I think I won't say we coddle them, but I think we don't give them opportunities to grow, and I kind of blame that a little bit on society and the non-farming community. And that's just personal for me because I grew up on a farm. I was driving a tractor when I was 11 years old, not doing like planting big 12 planter rows or of corn or anything, but,
Right.
Going to get hay for the cattle or, down to pulling a wagon down the barn. I was driving a tractor then. And, I look back at my grandchildren when some of them were 11, I think, oh my God, I wouldn't trust them driving a tractor. No, it wouldn't even give that a wink.
Right.
So I think just the things that we involve kids with and allow them to do, there's just good lessons in that. And I think sometimes as parents, or what I see, I think with younger parents, it's more, I want to be your friend and, oh, let me do kind of this for you, instead of letting them fail, letting them learn through those experiences in life. And it's, that I just don't think they get anything out of that. And they don't carry that forward into the reality of life. They've kind of gotten things based on who their parents are or whatever. When they get to college or in the real work world, it's like, oh, who are you? You're just another employee of mine. I don't care who your mom and dad are or your
Right.
brother is or, your uncle is or anything else. And they're going, oh, that concerns me.
Mhm.
Or that, they struggle with that, I think, quite a little bit. So,
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to touch on training a little bit. We talked about that. So back in 1978, did you have any inkling in your mind that you was going to have to be a psychologist, a lawyer, a doctor, and a counselor and a law enforcement officer all in the same person?
no, not at all. In fact, my dad, when I was taking college courses, he wasn't real excited about me being a cop. My degree's course in criminal justice, but I remember him looking at my book one time about course I take. He says, it concerns me. You're not mandated to take any psychology courses. He said, I don't get that. If you're going to be he was smart enough to recognize if you're going to be a cop, you got to learn how to kind of read people and deal with folks.
Right.
And do that. And that's what psychology does for you. Now, I took some psychology classes as electives, but there was nothing mandated in my degree. Now, I think there is today, obviously, because times have changed, but back then it wasn't seen as a necessary thing. And I say that to say this is common sense teachable? I see a lot of young people that have worked for me and still work for me that sometimes it's just easy to pick up a cell phone and call to get an answer rather than trying to resolve that yourself through logic and, elimination or whatever process you use. And I call it, kind of that common sense thing. They just don't seem to do that. They pick up the phone because that's easy. They connect, and that's back to that parenting issue. We answer that and we take care of that rather than saying, well, why don't you give this a little more thought? Call me back if you can't figure it out. That's the best answer you could give a young person, I think.
Yep. But on the other side of that is what I was talking about earlier. Social media is that you don't have to remember anything.
No.
You don't have to know anything. It's
No.
right at the touch of your. If you want to know something, you just say, I'll call it the Google effect.
Yeah.
If I want to know something, I don't have to remember anything anymore. I just type it in on Google and there it is. I found it and I got it. There's the answer and then it's gone.
Yeah, it's memory stuff. I can cite you the phone numbers of my 4 best friends.
Yep.
In school. I can tell you what their home phone numbers were. I couldn't tell you a phone number of some of my employees because
I barely know my phone
because I
number.
push a face or
Yeah.
I just push I
name.
just push a code or a name on the screen and stuff. So yeah, I think that certainly is played where we just don't our learning ability or ability to retain information just doesn't work like it used to because it's just easy. You're right. It's easy to get it.
Knowing everything you know over the past 28 years and more with the other law enforcement time you did, what would you tell a new officer or try and tell a person that was thinking about going into being a police officer, jail officer, a deputy? What would you say to that?
I would say to them as they're preparing is to learn everything you can. Take advantage of every opportunity to learn something, go into training, seminars, in-house away, whatever. If you have an opportunity to do that, take that in. I think in the preamble of that, I would say to them, Do you get that rise of hair on the back of your neck when something isn't right? Have you ever had that happen to you? And if they say no, I would tell them, I'm not sure this is the right profession for you, because that gut level instinct of something's not right here, something looks bad, keeps us all safe. I mean, we refer to it as hypervigilance. Sometimes Dr. Gilmart refers to it as hypervigilance, but those are the things when we're at work that keep us as safe as you possibly can, is recognizing like, ooh, this doesn't feel right. I remember doing that with one of the Clinton officers riding with one time. We were car stopping a car, and he was just the way it was stopping, kind of stopped and pulled up a little bit, stopped, pulled up a little bit. I told the officers with me, I said, be careful. I feel like something is not right here. But, if you don't have that, you just shouldn't be in this profession. And I think, secondly, you got to care for folks. You got to set aside the bad people of the world. There is evil in the world, and evil ought to be locked up. But there's a lot of people that just make mistakes, that are good folks or come from good families, got involved with whatever. And sometimes they straighten themselves out and sometimes they don't. And as a human being, we should make efforts to try to work with them instead of just being the police and saying, by gosh, I'm just going to take you to jail and we're done. I would say you have to befriend them, but you treat them with respect. You treat them as a human being, and if they're out 6 months later and they see you at Walmart and they want to talk, take the time, stop and visit with them. There's something about you they respect and want to know about. They may not ever say it, but I can assure you, in my 28 years, times I've seen it, it has great value for them. May not mean much to you as a police officer, but it has great value to that person that's asking.
So I want to know, probably be entertaining for everybody else to know, over your period of time here, what's one of your favorite stories to tell while you've been on duty? You ain't got to mention names or anything like that. And just the call you were on, it's hilarious.
Sam,
thing happened to you.
There's so many. I think one of the first thing that popped in my head when you were going down that path, I'm thinking of a this is back to my juvenile days, not a sheriff, but I was at the police station. They'd called me out. They arrested this kid. I think he'd had a little to drink, and he was known to use drugs, but they had patted him down, hadn't found anything. I was sitting there. He was sitting at the end of the bench, and I was sitting there filling out the form, taking it out. And he decides to adjust his ball cap that he has on, just out of habit. And he adjusts that up, and out falls his marijuana and his pipe and his rolling papers. And he looks at me and goes, "I guess I'm going to jail." And I go, "Yeah, I think so." So I mean, there's 100 of those kinds of stories.
And he might not go to jail.
No,
if he's a juvenile, maybe.
Yeah, maybe juvenile marijuana stuff. But it's there's just hundreds of stories like that. Things people have done, and and I by the grace of God go I. You've heard me say that around the office when you work there, but it's truly an accurate statement. Criminals do kind of, I won't say stupid things, but things that just naturally get them caught. And as police officers, we should be thankful that the religious part of our society still works. People like to confess their sins still. If we ever lose that, our job is going to be much, much harder in trying to solve crime and change human behavior and those kind of things that I talked about. Because if they don't have a soul, basically, I guess is what I'm saying. If they don't have a soul, they're not inclined to want to tell you anything about what they did. But most people still, a lot of people, even criminals that have been before the system 2 or 3 times, still have that feeling about them, that it feels good to get that off your chest, to tell somebody about it.
So again, I'll ask you another question. If you could tell the audience and some of the younger deputies that may listen to this, law enforcement working in a jail is a stressful environment. You're going to see some awful, awful stuff during your time. If you've spent any time in law enforcement, you're going to see it eventually. Hopefully not, but it's inevitable that you're going to see something horrible. How would you advise deputies on how to deal with those traumatic events in their life?
Well, I think first and foremost, if you have one of those events happen, you need to seek counsel, whether that be from a fellow officer or a professional counselor or whatever. And again, that's part of the things that's part of the times that have changed. And it probably one of the things I struggle with the most, because I'm just a suck it up buttercup kind of person. I grew up on a farm where we slaughtered animals,
Rub dirt on it.
whatever. I mean, that's just what we did. So, I won't say that I'm immune to it. I won't tell you that I haven't cried or I haven't been affected emotionally by certain scenes, some scenes that I've seen over the years, but there's you let that go. You understand that human beings do god awful things to each other, and that we can't explain it, can't understand it, and if we spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, we never will, and we'll just drive ourselves BS crazy. Truly, you have to learn that this is a job or career, but those things that we see and do, you've got to. You got to learn to process those. My wife and I have been married, Diane, of course, I've been married for 46 years, this November. And she's been my champion, because when I come home and she says, what's the matter? I say nothing. She gets on me until I give it up. And that's, I didn't know that as a police officer, but I've learned how important that is. And I would say that to young officers, having somebody to talk to, whether that's a girlfriend, spouse, or if not married, maybe just a brother cop, police officer that you trust and has good judgment about things. But just being able to get that off your chest, to kind of sit in the corner and just cry or whatever it takes to kind of deal with that emotion. But you got to learn too to, once that's done and you've accepted it, it's just, you move on to the next call or the next day you work or whatever. Yeah.
So you're excited?
I am. Diane said the other day, she said, I've noticed some little bit of less stress already in your life. And I said, yeah, as you know, I've always been kind of a 7:30 and stay till 5:30 kind of guy, and it lasts probably 3 months. It gets to be about 3:30 in the afternoon. I go, I think I'm going home. I got some stuff to do around the house.
Start slowly pushing them duties off to the other staff.
And like I said when we started, it's it survives without me. I've been gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. It's just amazing how well it works when I'm not there. Yeah. But it does. And I say that a little tongue in cheek.
So what are you going to do?
Well, I'm teaching a little college at State Fair. I've done that for the last 4, 5, 6 years, and I would like to do that. Maybe some academy instruction. I'm working on a resume to kind of push that out to some other industry folks if there's something there. I don't want 40 hours a week. I want to kind of pick my own schedule, try to work from home as much as I can, not be tied to a classroom or a facility or whatever. So I'm going to be kind of picky, and if I find something, that's great. If I don't, I guess I'm just going to adjust my budget, live on my retirements.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to, when I quit being a jail administrator, I was like, you know what, I'm going to pick some part-time stuff and I'm just going to relax and try and work from home, that kind of stuff. And then I don't know if it's my person, and you may be the same, as I just kind of accidentally found other stuff work to keep me busy. And now I'm working more hours probably than I did as a jail administrator with MSA and the other company I work for. So, you might not be able to relax. I mean, it may take you a while to go, you know what, I'm either bored or I need something else to do.
Yeah.
If that's your person.
And I've really convinced myself that I just need to step away. We switched over to digital radios, and we have to upgrade your scanner at home. Well, we've always listened to scanners home. We have 2 scanners in our house, one in the front room, one in the bedroom. So I listen to what's going on. I've always done that all my years that I've been sheriff. But I told Diane, my wife, I said, these things are about $500. I said, you really want to spend $500 for something we're only going to use for the next 8 months? Because I'm not planning on listening to it after December 31st. I'm really not. I've come to that decision. I really, if I hear sirens in my area, I might get up and kind of look out the window and see what's going on.
Are you going to make your way to the beach and have you one of them umbrella drinks?
I may. I don't know. We're talking about doing something after the first year, just to get away for a little bit. So, we did that when we were first elected in '97. We went just down to Branson, but it was just good. My campaign manager said, "I've got you this condo for a week. Whether you win or lose, you just need to go down there and get away and just relax and not think about anything." And he was absolutely right. And I see retirement kind of as the same thing. I think just take a couple of weeks, get clear out of town, be away from it, and shut my phone off and just enjoy it.
All right, Sheriff. Well, it's been good talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate being here. Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Anything else you'd like to say?
I don't think so. Oh, I got a lot of things to say, but we're probably done for the day.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Sheriff.
Thanks, Sam.
I want to end the show. Thank you for watching, and I want to thank our sponsors for sponsoring the show. And tune in next time for another episode of Sheriff's Talk. Thank you very much.
This is the host of Sheriff's Talk, Sam Boyd. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to find out more about MSA or become a member, go to mosheriffs.com and click Become a Member. Hope to hear from you soon.